Secrétaire parlementaire du président du Conseil privé de la Reine pour le Canada et le ministre de la Protection civile.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this very important issue and a very important debate that is taking place. As members know that I represent the riding of Ottawa Centre. The House of Commons, where most of you are sitting, I'm sitting at my home, is located in Ottawa Centre. Speaker, what we see outside, what we are talking about for last 11 days is happening right in the heart of my community. Although the Parliament Hill is located right here in downtown Ottawa, many people forget, and perhaps these occupiers have forgotten, that a block in all directions from Parliament Hill are residences. There are people who call downtown their home. They're seniors. They're people with disabilities. They're young people. They're families who live in downtown Ottawa. Speaker, I have now lost words as to how I can describe what my community is going through. So I thought perhaps I can start my remarks today by just reading to all the members, through you, Speaker, few of the emails that I have been receiving, just to give you a glimpse of the pain and agony people have going through for the last 11 days. Speaker, I can spend the full 20 minutes reading you emails because there are so many. But I do want to talk a little bit about solutions in my remarks. So here's email number 1. I'm one of the Ottawa residents in your riding. I feel the need to raise my concerns with you so you may escalate them through the appropriate channels. The members of the convoy who are occupying the city have been causing damage and mayhem across downtown. And I strongly disagree with the police action, or rather the inaction of the police up to this point. These people from the convoy have stolen from homeless shelters, vandalized and damaged houses and businesses that display pride flags, assaulted and harassed residents for wearing masks during the pandemic, desecrated our memorials, launched illegal fireworks, and most recently have been caught attempting to set an apartment building on fire while taping the doors closed. This is just some of the inexcusable actions that these people have done to our city and to the residents of our city. Email number 2. I have been a resident of Ottawa for over 40 years. Never before have I seen such prolonged, aggressive, and unlawful behavior in our community. Constant truck horns blaring, diesel fumes, engines revving and shouting at all hours have become insufferable. I am horrified by the racist and anti-Semitic symbols I have recently seen in my neighborhood, which are unacceptable and have no place in Canada. Email 3. It should be well understood 2 years into this pandemic that disabled folks are among the most vulnerable to COVID-19. We fall into many groups. There are those like me who are vaccinated but who face a higher risk of adverse outcomes should we get infected. Others are immunocompromised and get less protection from the vaccine and would be less able to fight off an infection. Others still are medically ineligible for a vaccine. Public health measures requiring mask wearing and vaccine passport have kept the disabled community safe. They are our first line of defense. Disabled Ottawans have been placed at serious risks over the past 10 days given the flagrant disregard for mask wearing and vaccine passports by occupiers. Places like the Rideau Center, as well as small businesses, have closed because they were unable to keep customers and their employees safe. Email number 4. We're constituents of Ottawa Centre and unfortunately live in the Glebe. Our daughter, however, is in Centretown. She was first impacted by the current crisis when a week ago, last Friday, she was trying to do an online presentation from home with a background of air horns. She moved in with us 9 days ago. Others have not been so lucky and have had to remain confined to their homes in the red zone. One of our daughter's visits to check on her home, all she could smell on her first 2 floors was diesel fuel. Imagine trying to take care of kids in this situation. One of our daughter's neighbors has downloaded an app that measures decibels. 66 is the maximum before hearing begins to be impaired. The neighbor's app was reading 72 inside her home. Email number 5. I feel unsafe buying groceries as people are in the store without wearing masks and behaving aggressively. Like many other businesses, Massine's independent grocer on Bank Street is dealing with the protest noise and aggression from the public, as well as possible increased exposure to COVID-19 Omicron from those not wearing masks. While taking on the cost of hiring extra security, I feel bad for the cashiers and security staff who have remained patient and calm under these dire conditions. I'm exhausted. While the last 23 months of the pandemic have certainly been challenging, working from home during the week with all the noise from the protests has become aggravating, while not being able to enjoy a short walk or a quiet afternoon indoors over the last 2 weekends has truly become depressing. Mr. Speaker, I can go on. I can write you 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 more emails. People pleading for peace. People who are peace-loving. People who understand that we live in the nation's capital and peaceful protest is part of our democracy. But not that is something of this nature, as something that is nothing short of an occupation, something that is unlawful and definitely not peaceful. What people have been asking in my community is that, have we forgotten that we are still living through a global pandemic? In fact, we are still going through a 5th wave with restrictions around us to ensure that we do not get ill and that we do not overburden our healthcare system and our healthcare workers. Sometimes I wonder when I hear some of the debates, some of the arguments coming in this House, especially from the official opposition, that something like COVID-19 pandemic never happened. That somehow things were normal and we just all decided to change the rules around us. Speakers, we all have gone through a very difficult time. It has not been easy for any one of us, especially those who have been vulnerable and marginalized. And yes, we need to have a conversation around what lies ahead. How do we end this pandemic? How do we get to a place that it becomes an endemic? And how our lives will be impacted by that? But that debate does not take place in the form that is happening right now outside the House of Commons. That's not a debate. That's us just holding a community hostage. That is now how you engage in a meaningful conversation and a respectful conversation. Speaker, I am not interested in speaking to somebody who waves a swastika or a Confederate flag. I have members of racialized and Jewish community in my writing who are, and I've used this word before, rattled. They're scared. They're re-traumatized and victimized. None of us believe that we are actually seeing those images in our hometown, our nation's capital. Speaker, I urge all the members of this House, you're all respectable, good people with the right motivation to serve your communities, to build a better country. to please come together, to please ask these occupiers to leave my community alone, to restore peace in my community. They want to engage in a conversation, have a conversation, but we cannot have a conversation when a whole set of neighborhoods are being held hostage over the last 11 days. This protest, this occupation, this civil unrest has to come to an end. It has to come to an end for the sake of people who live in this community, for businesses who have suffered so much, who were looking forward to opening on January 31st when the provincial lockdown measures were being lifted, and they are unable to do any business. They are closed. Have we thought about impact on them and their families, how they're going to make ends meet? I'm grateful to my colleagues, ministers, the member from Ottawa Vanier, the president of the Treasury Board, who are working closely with me so that we can find ways to support our businesses, where they are now had a double hit to them as a result of this occupation. So, Speaker, in my limited time, I want to focus on what can we do? How can we get out of this? I'm already pleading to all of us to let's work together, speak with one voice, be rational people that we are, to ask these occupiers to please leave, and then engage in a process where they work with their elected representatives, where they, hey, perhaps run for office themselves if they feel so strongly that we need better laws and better policies. But in a democratic society, that's what we do. But in the near moment that we're living right now, Speaker, we need to make sure that this occupation ends. And one of the ways we can do this is by ensuring that laws are being enforced. The Ottawa Police has been working hard, and they are responsible for providing the safety and security of the residents of Ottawa. That is their job. By law, that's what they're required to do. And it's important for them to enforce the law. Municipal laws, provincial laws, federal laws, all three of them have been broken. I am a lawyer by profession, Speaker. I've been the former Attorney General of Ontario. I can give you an entire list of laws that have not been followed through, and we need to make sure that enforcement is there. If resources are needed, as they have been requested, as the federal government has been providing those resources to them from day one, we will continue to do so. I've been involved in this from the moment this protest has started, and I have to tell you, working with Minister of Public Safety, working with the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, including the Prime Minister, who've been engaged, who have taken the time to speak with me about this issue. We've been there for City of Ottawa and the Ottawa Police Service to give them the resources they need so the laws could be enforced. We saw some enhanced law enforcement starting last night. I really hope that that enforcement remain in a sustained fashion so that peace could be returned back to our community, so that we could ensure that the members of my community can go back to living the way they lived. But we need to enforce the law. That is what the members of our community are asking for. We need to make sure that there's a plan and this occupation is put to an end. Speaker, there's no doubt that there's going to be a fair bit of conversations that are going to take place after this occupation is done, and it will come to an end. We will do as we always do, rightly so, learn from incidences like these, from mistakes made, things done well, things done not so well. And we shall do so in this circumstance as well. As you can imagine, as a member for Ottawa Centre, I am already starting to think how can we do things differently? And in appropriate time, I will be presenting ideas, Speaker, that we need to consider so that we can protect our democratic institutions, that we can find ways to promote peaceful protests, as is our democratic right, but also be able to safeguard the right to live peacefully for the residents of downtown Ottawa, the constituents that I'm so honored to serve. And one of those ideas, Speaker, that I will be speaking to the members, to the House, is perhaps an evaluation of parliamentary precinct. Right now, we define parliamentary precinct as Parliament Hill and some of the buildings that are located on Wellington Street and Spark Street. Maybe we need to study increasing the boundary of parliamentary precinct so that we can have a better, robust safety protocols in place. Not take away lawful, peaceful protests, which are critical to a democracy, but ensuring in a way that we do not run into the kind of circumstances we are running in. So I will be indulging members, my colleagues, into a conversation where we analyze and study better whether parliamentary precinct needs to have a more bigger footprint and better protocols in place as to how we ensure that a whole downtown is not held hostage. Speaker, I hope you've been able to see the challenge that I am going through. But most importantly, Speaker, I hope that I have been able to channel some of the emotions of my constituents. Sometimes it's hard to express in words what my community is going through. Sometimes it's really difficult to hear the other side. And Speaker, I've always said that I want to listen to the other side, legitimize this occupation as something as civil or peaceful. When people are suffering, they've had a rough time almost over the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and this has made their life unbearable. Speaker, I urge through you, all the members of this House, to let's stand together by the end of this debate and collectively ask for these people to leave. We can engage in a civil conversation. We can hear each other and agree to disagree, but this is not the way to do it. I implore you, I urge you, please leave our community alone. Please let people in Ottawa Centre, in downtown Ottawa, live peacefully. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The honourable member for Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the residents of Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou on this important topic. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary made 2 points that I wish to follow up with him on, and they're both relatively brief. The first is, Mr. Speaker, he said, let's work together. And I note that the official leader of the opposition tonight sent a letter to the Prime Minister and to all party leaders to work together. So based on that, would the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary be prepared to advise the Prime Minister to do just what he said we should be doing? Secondly, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary said the police should be enforcing the laws. Does he view it as the Prime Minister's job to tell the police what to do in this situation?
The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I will address the second question first. I think the member opposite knows quite well that in our system of our democracy, politicians do not tell our police officials as to how to enforce the law. there is a very important, significant, and healthy distinction and differentiation between the two. I have the honor of serving as the Solicitor General of Ontario. I very much know, Speaker, that you cannot tell police how to operate. So I would be very careful in suggesting that somehow the Prime Minister should tell Ottawa Police Service, or any other police service for that matter, as to how they should apply the law. As for working together, of course we should work together, and I look forward to reading of the letter. But I think the member opposite should also listen to the healthcare experts, to the medical experts, as to why it is important that we get vaccinated and put an end to this pandemic. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. L'honorable député de Mirabel.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et j'aimerais remercier le collègue pour son discours, un discours engagé, émouvant, tourné vers ses concitoyens, et ça ne peut que piquer notre sens de l'empathie. Mais, Monsieur le Président, si vous ne me l'aviez pas dit, j'aurais jamais deviné que le collègue était membre du parti au pouvoir, Monsieur le Président, parce que moi, j'ai compté le nombre de solutions concrètes, Monsieur le Président, qui sont proposées par le collègue, et je me suis arrêté à 0. Où est la cellule de crise qui a été suggérée, notamment par l'ancien ministre Alan Rock, ancien ministre de la Justice? Où est cette cellule de crise-là avec les corps policiers? Et nulle part, Monsieur le Président. Où est la transparence? Où est le point de presse quotidien du ministre de la Sécurité publique, Monsieur le Président? Ce point de presse-là est nulle part. Monsieur le Président, il faut que les libéraux comprennent que, suite à la dernière élection, la population leur a donné un mandat minoritaire et qu'il faut que les libéraux cessent de parler à eux-mêmes et s'écouter eux-mêmes et qu'ils commencent à écouter les solutions. Monsieur le Président.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker. And I think the member opposite is trying to say that somehow this is a political problem. Speaker, we're living through a pandemic. We have a healthcare challenge at the moment. This is a global pandemic. Canada is not alone in fighting this pandemic. This is happening across the world. So to suggest that the way to deal with the protests outside is by holding daily press conferences, I don't understand how that was going to put an end to this crisis. What's needed is to ensure that the laws that we have created, and you and I are part of creating those laws, are properly enforced. And if somebody breaks the law, then they should face the consequences of breaking the law. And that's what it's required in Ottawa at this moment. I'm on the ground. I'm out in there trying to find solutions. We need to make sure the laws are enforced. This is an unlawful protest which needs to end. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for his speech. When I talk to constituents, they are tired and frustrated and disheartened that we are still in this pandemic, but the vast majority of them are following public health guidelines. They are tired and fed up with people who refuse to wear masks, refuse to follow public health orders, putting others at risk. People at Ottawa, as the member mentioned, are beyond tired and fed up, experiencing harassment and assault, witnessing anti-Semitic and fascist symbols, women being threatened with rape, residents from racialized and 2S LGBTQIA+ communities having discriminatory slurs hurled at them. Canadians are also concerned hearing reports of an attempted arson in the lobby of a residential apartment building. It's terrifying. Does the member agree that it should not have taken this long for the Prime Minister to start talking to municipal and provincial governments? The convoy organizers were clear about their intent. They were allowed to do exactly what they said they would do. Does the member understand why Ottawa residents are tired and fed up with this Liberal government?
Well, Member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you. I thank the member for her comment, and I will agree with her on the point is that Canadians have made a lot of sacrifices, and they are following the public health guidelines. They are getting vaccinated. They are wearing masks. They are socially distancing themselves. It's amazing. I have 2 young children. It is amazing to see the kind of habits our kids have developed. They're good habits. Good hygiene as a result of this pandemic. but a lot has been done. But I also want to assure the member that since the beginning of this crisis, the Prime Minister has been fully engaged. I've had conversations with him. He's being briefed. But the Prime Minister, as the head of government, has no power to tell police how to deal with the situation. Our law is absolutely clear. Nor we want in our system of democracy having politicians tell police what laws they should be enforcing and how. It's our job to create the law, and an independent police role is to enforce the law, and in fact, independent judiciary to arbitrate whether the application of the law is correct or not. But I can assure all the members that the Prime Minister has been engaged. The Prime Minister is fully informed and briefed, and making sure that this crisis gets over as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Halifax.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to tell the member from Ottawa Centre that my heart is breaking for him and for his constituents. It's hard to imagine taking what's happening here in Ottawa and putting it in Halifax, a city that I love as much as he loves his city, and seeing the kind of damage and terrorizing of neighborhoods, damage to property, illegality going on. It just must be so incredibly heartbreaking. And so many of our hearts go out to you. Now, the member is in a very unique position, being the member of Parliament for the most directly impacted part of the city, but also as a former Attorney General for the province of Ontario. He alluded, Mr. Speaker, to some of the changes that he'll be bringing, proposals for changes that he'll be bringing forth in due course. I'd love if you could give us a sneak preview on the flavor of some of those. He mentioned changes to the parliamentary precinct, the elimination of vehicles off of Wellington Street, and the pedestrianization of that street would be a remarkable innovation, but even changes to the operating procedures of this House to better manage some of the activities of members. We're very interested to hear that. Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. I thank the member opposite. You're absolutely right. I, along with the member from Ottawa Vanier, are in the heart of this crisis. And as I mentioned, the community suffering is unbearable. I'm starting to run out of words to explain it. And that's why I think as soon as this crisis is over, we need to start engaging in thinking about the future and how to prevent things like that by ensuring that we create an environment where we have peaceful protests, which is, again, I want to stress, is a democratic right. And so one of those things, and one of the interesting things as everybody can imagine about Ottawa is multiple jurisdictions. You know, we've got the Parliament of Canada, which is the government of Canada, and then you have the municipal service too. And so from street to street, jurisdictions can change. A park is owned by one federal entity, and a street next to it is a provincial or municipal street. And so what we need to look at is the boundaries of parliamentary precincts so we can perhaps better coordinate. But you just, the member speaker just said something which has been a deep desire of mine, that we need to look at finding ways to convert Wellington Street into a pedestrian street, to make sure to beautify it, making it green so more people can enjoy the beauty of Parliament Hill as opposed to being able to drive their cars and perhaps even occupy, as we've seen in this instance.